I'm Parveen Adams. I will speak briefly before the director, Ingrid Schroeder, introduces our guest speaker, Anri Sala. I ask you to remain silent when I end. This evening, Anri Sala will give the second Mark Cousins annual lecture here in the Mark Cousins Lecture Hall, but not at Mark's beloved lectern, now under the clock in the alcove opposite, refigured with its mirror miracled out of its oblivion. We owe this to the craftsmanship of the Thai twins, Pu and Pla. I remain profoundly grateful to them for their devotion to Mark. And my deepest thanks to Claire Potter, poet and head of the writing school, who has, with infinite subtlety, flair, and grasp of a text, introduced me to the finer nuances of writing that deepen an argument. She helped me transform the text. Bringing Anri to Mark today seems fitting. Anri, an artist who works with music, Mark, a performer with words. Let me first conjure up a performance for those of you who did not attend Mark's Friday lectures. On Friday evenings, by the end of Mark's lecture, the audience was alight, released from received wisdom, both habitual and theoretical. He ceaselessly questioned the apparent transparency of meaning, which dissolved before our eyes. Mark left us with its scattered remnants. Crucially, Mark exhibited the process of thinking. He did this by undermining the language of lecturing, by the disruption of grammar, of the connection between sentences, of the continuity of the subject matter of paragraphs, but also, and importantly, by the constant inclusion of personal narratives, and above all, the centrality of his presence. His speech was inflected, there were marked variations in timing, and there were modulations of voice. His breathing was palpable. He glanced repeatedly at the clock. He leaned on his lectern, the silent witness to his unspoken thoughts. Everything coalesced into an experience that words, speech, language could not grasp. An experience of the as yet unsaid. Anri is explicit about his aim. It is indeed the disruption of syntax. In his case, by playing with asynchrony in music. As Fabian Lipté says of Anri's work, in this process, it is exactly the experience of a present that has become non-simultaneously in itself that opens the present up to the as yet unheard, in which things past and things future communicate themselves. Recently, Anri has intervened in the time and structure of frescoes. For Mark, art alone can overcome the repetitions of desire to produce the new. The frescoes quite literally meld images and techniques, past and present. Time is suspended, and the new is born. Both Mark and Anri touch on the essential when they speak about the breath. Anri, speaking of Ron McNair, the black astronaut on the doomed Challenger flight, who had intended to play a saxophone in space, asks, what is the soundtrack of an intention? I was interested in this idea of solitude, that it might be being out there in space, a wind instrument, because it connects to breath, and that probably, when we are really alone, that's the last thing that keeps us company, so to say. Mark's final reflections, just a few months before his own death, were on breath. The breath of life, the deprivation of breath, and the symbolic conditions of the space to breathe. Breath is what both dissolves life and gives life. In between, we have the invisible syntax of life that carries us along. Breath is indeed the space that accompanies our lives, and breath keeps you close company unto death.
Thank you, Praveen. I think that's a perfect introduction and a perfect reflection of Mark, who I know is so deeply missed by so many people here. And I think this is a perfect moment to welcome back Anri Sala, who was here in 2012, and to reflect upon the way in which, I suppose, the culture of teaching has changed and the way in which we express ourselves. I mean, I was in a jury earlier today, and there's always a tendency within a project to seek out a linear narrative, to seek out a coherence in an idea, to understand where, I suppose, the origins of thought then lead naturally onto a project. And I think we miss Mark particularly because he had the capacity to disrupt that way of thinking and to call attention to those ambiguities, to the nuance, to the kinds of things that do collapse and fold: syntax, narrative, rhythm, time. And I think this is a perfect reminder to have you here, Anri, to be able to remind our students and to remind all of us of the kinds of nuance of thinking that I think Mark really represented. So although we can't have Mark here, I think you're a wonderful representative, and I'm very, very happy to have you back. So welcome, Anri Sala.
Thank you very much to both of you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's been a very long breath since I was here last time. It was in 2012. And like Praveen said, breath is something that is very, very present in my thinking, in my work, very often implicitly or increasingly implicitly. Sometimes this is a moment where breath is the moment where space and time, I know it's a binomial which is very often used, but it's a place where they cross, where you don't know what it will become. Will it become space, or will it become time? And I want to quote also from one of Mark's lectures, when he puts the finger on that moment when breath is both of it, where he says, let's stay for a moment with the question of dimensionality. The body, the human body, needs dimensionality in order to live. To live is to at least have the minimal space that the body needs. And if we go into it further, we find that human beings are very sensitive about needing that dimension. Breath, in terms of when one thinks of it in terms of music, is a little bit like a musical phrase. It's unlike the heartbeat, which is closer to the metronome, the closer to the present moment. Breath, to me, has this faculty to connect what is no longer to what is now and what is not there yet. So that there's this lingering aspect of breath that has this potential for things to become. I think it's also what carries us further in space. This is like that alone. This is like the time it gives us forward, whether it's in time or in our presence, in our physicality. Before I move to, I'll be showing throughout this talk, I'll be showing different elements, mostly from more recent works. They're not all closely related to breath, but they even when they are not closely related, they still touch breath in that moment of dimensionality, of the importance of dimensionality. I'll start first with two excerpts from a film, which I think it's back from 2011, actually, 1395 Days Without Red. There will be two excerpts. It's about what impacts breath and how breath impacts us. In the case of the film, one sees a woman crossing a city, a besieged city, Sarajevo, reliving what it was to live under the siege of Sarajevo. She eventually, maybe she's a musician, that she's going to a everyday rehearsal of the Sarajevo Philharmonic Orchestra, which was known to keep on rehearsing every day and to make tens of performances during that time. In this work, and why I bring it here, I'm interested about how breath can be also imprinted by obviously, as we know, by politics, but also by the geopolitical factor, and also the urban grid, the way where we are breathing in the city, how is was the environment, how around us, how does the city, how is it organized around us? What made that idea possible in the film? This is a film that started as a collaboration with a fellow artist, Sheila Kamerich, was to reimagine how could one relive the experience of being in the siege of Sarajevo, but without telling it, just conveying it through how that experience impacted the breathing, and eventually how it impacted, by impacting the breathing of a musician, how it impacted her humming a piece of music. The piece of music that she hums, it's her part as a musician in the orchestra, that from the first movement of Tchaikovsky's Pathetic. It's particularly that piece that we chose together with Sheila and Ari Benjamin Myers, a fellow artist, musician who is also, you'll see a sighting of him in one of the excerpts that I've chosen. He's conducting the Sarajevo Orchestra. We chose that because it's a piece of music which is very classic. So it has a sense, it has a pace which is regular. So whenever something goes wrong, it impacts the pace of the music. So whenever something goes wrong surrounding the fate of the people who are crossing the city, it impacts their breath, and by impacting their breath, it will impact the music in ways which are palpable to us, even if we are not musicians, which includes myself. The first excerpt. The second excerpt will follow soon. This is just to situate one of the crossings in the city of Sarajevo. There were around 12 crossings which were very visible from the hills where the snipers were positioned. Hence, I was saying why the urban grid, the way our city lies in this valley in between the hills, but also the fact how it's very much like a grid with perpendicular streets towards the hills, made each of these crossings like an eventual last breath, to come back to the idea of the breath. So because of people had to run and then they had to catch their breath and normalize their breath once they arrived on the other side. This is where the idea came of associating this experience of the breath with the humming, which is coming later in the film and also in the next excerpt, and how that experience will impact also the pace of or derange the pace of music as it was composed by Tchaikovsky.
This section again. And one more time.
the way how the music was rewritten, rearranged, was to take in account the way how the breathing fluctuates, of how it would accelerate or slow down, the way how the orchestra plays the piece, but also at the same time putting the orchestra in difficulty so that the conductor would have to continuously try to bring it in the right place, in the right pace of music. So there's this encounter between the breath with the music, the person with the crossing, that where this space of the alteration happens. The next project, or the next piece that I want to show, it's a piece that I've done very recently this year. It's a sound piece, but I'll show you some images. It's about. I was invited to work something on archives and and excavations and findings that they have in Pompeii, and I was very much interested about a very relatively recent excavation of two bodies, which were found, had been buried by the lava. Like we know the casts, they're very popular for those who have been to Pompeii or have seen images related to excavations of Pompeii. There is a certain technique about how to make the positive negative. And what I was interested is in bringing another encounter between in this case again, space, volume, breath, and an instrument, between these two bodies, as well as an instrument that had not been played for 2 millennia. A tibia, or an aulos, as it's called in Greek, which is a double flute. I was interested in combining together these two bodies together with a double flute, like a double-double in that sense, where what did attract me to this, what triggered this idea is that, first of all, the two bodies, they're still connected. You see it in a later picture. They are connected, they're still touching each other. And I was very much interested of transforming that volume of the bodies, as if it was the last breath that had stayed withheld by the volume that their bodies kept under the lava, to transform it into a piece of music. So the idea was to calculate the time that it takes for the volume of air left or kept by the bodies while they were there, and to have it flow through the tibia, through the aulos, with the help of the breath of a musician. The possibility to calculate the volume of air was also because, being a recent finding, it was very well documented of how many liters were poured in what is the negative, like what the negative that became positive, the space of the body that was voided, which was refilled to be casted and to become present. This is a picture from the process. Now I'll let it play while I speak a little bit. Having calculated how long it takes for this volume of air, which was kept with the bodies, to go through the tibia, using the fact that the tibia, it's a double flute, the musician was playing through each of the parts of the tibia, and the moment because the calculation of the two bodies, because the calculation of the two bodies, they didn't have the same volume. There is also history behind, because of the one body being more frail. There is it's believed to be the bodies of a master and the slave. It's believed to be so because of how one of the bodies, while being of a younger age, is more torn, is more used than the other body. Their volume of that they kept were different, which produces this interval, this difference between the two breaths, that even when they start at the same time, they won't continue together equally. So this is what produces this, what is called often the tone of difference. I'll come back now to the approach. Each of the two parts of the tibia of the flute has different holes, and it's believed that one of the flutes was to play the harmonies and the melody, and the other one was to play the harmonies. And the holes are very close to each other for that reason. So the musical intervals are very close, and it's also known that when two sounds are very close to each other in a certain way, it produces what is called the third tone, the tone of difference. The tone of difference is it's something which is both sound and music, real and also psychoacoustic, because it's not something that is necessarily produced there, but it's something that also our brain and our ear make out of it. So if we would hear it in conditions of the installation, there are certain moments when the two breathings and where the two tones meet, the moments that they overlap, they'll produce this third sound. I'll let you, the duration of the piece, we won't hear it all, it's like 9 minutes, 25 seconds, and I'm precise with it because it's literally a transposition of the volume of the two bodies through the flow, through the aulos, to become time. So it's like a volume of air that becomes a temporality in terms of the time it takes for it to go through the flute and become music. Next, I'll be showing a film which, in a way, throws us more towards the future. It's yet by combining two moments from the past. It's called Time No Longer. It's a turntable that is floating in zero gravity, and as it floats in zero gravity, the stylus cannot stay anchored on the vinyl and keep on playing the music all the time. So, and it loses traction, and the fact it loses traction, but it comes back on the vinyl whenever its orbit brings it back to it. It won't play the music where it stopped playing it, so it questions the continuity or the linearity of music. What the vinyl is, the two stories, the two presences, the two people that are connected into film, or which is a connection that I am doing. It's the music of Olivier Messiaen, who composed a quartet for the End of Times in '41 when he was enclosed in a POW camp. And particularly, I chose the part in the composition in the quator, which is a solo, which is also played by a clarinet, which is once again a wind instrument. Praveen made the connection, and I did it also earlier too, between in 1395 days between the humming, the breath, and the wind instrument, and this is something that keeps on coming in the work. And here again, it's a combination between two wind instruments. It's the original piece, which was written by Messiaen and written for Anri Sala, also a co-prisoner in the same camp with him, who was to play throughout the whole quartet, but also there's only one moment of a solo in the composition, which is called The Abyss of the Birds. And then an association with another piece of music that never happened, or another performance that never happened, that was to happen, of Ron McNair in 1986. He was an astronaut, but also a very accomplished saxophone player, who was supposed to make a recording and make the very first recording, professional recording of music in space and in zero gravity, for a performance that would have happened down in Houston by Jean-Michel Jarre. What he was to play was known, was written, was composed, but it did not happen because, unfortunately, he was a member of the crew of the Challenger, which exploded shortly after taking off. So I was very much interested in instead of making happen a music which could not have been recorded, which was eventually recorded in a normal situation down, but not in the condition of zero gravity. It was not recorded by Ron McNair. I was thinking about what is the soundtrack of an intention, of something that doesn't happen, which again brings us to this relation of between the no longer and the now, like the moment that the now is not the continuity of what could no longer happen. And this is what drew me back, so it's a back and forth to the music of Messiaen, because there was something intuitively about about this music, which was composed in conditions of incarceration, but also that other music which wasn't played because of the accident, which would have been otherwise recorded in another form of technological incarceration, which is like being locked and being isolated up there. Now, the way how I don't know how well this will work, because I won't be showing you the whole film, but I took moments of the film per se, and then moments when in the continuity of the film, when I showed it the very first time in Houston, and then later in Paris. So there will be like back and forth between the film, a close-up on the film, and the way how it is shown, because it's also about the dimension, or it's also about how the space where it's shown imprints itself in the story. So it's not only about the neutrality of the film. Now, there is one thing that I want to mention about it is that the very first time that I was invited to that I showed this work, which was in Houston, was in a very large cistern. You see a part of it at some point. It's a huge tank still with water, with a very loud acoustics. And I knew that the very first time that the film would be shown, it would be shown there. So I wanted to, in terms of the acoustics, the space, the architecture of the space, I was thinking about how to deal with these moments, not to let it become a cacophony. Because when too much sounds were built in space, then it would be impossible to hear the sounds, and it would be impossible to hear the silences when the stylus has lost contact with the continuity of music or with the vinyl. One element which is important in that is that while Messiaen only composed it for clarinet, in the soundtrack of The Intention, in the soundtrack of Time No Longer, actually it's a combination between the clarinet and the saxophone, because what Ron McNair was to record and play was a saxophone. Here we're jumping in a moment during the installation in Houston in the cistern. I'll make a stop here because I want to talk about a relation which is not. Oh, sorry for. Yes. Okay, I'll do it like this. A correlation between the music, which again is composed in a series of breaths. So the first thing in terms of finding a correlation between knowing that the stylus would lose the contact with the vinyl, the whole film is done in CGI. So it was very important. Of course, in CGI one can do everything, but to me it was very important to find the constraints within the CGI. So it was very important also to get a sense of letting go and truthfulness in it. It was very important to install in the program, in the CGI, what would the very embodiment of the situation. For example, what would be the orbital path of not only the turntable in the condition of zero gravity, but would also be the orbital path of the stylus, which itself is only touching at one point the turntable. So it's like a combination of two orbits that produces this effect of when it's going to touch the vinyl or not. Now, this was something that I did not want to control, so it's very much based on what it really happens, based on the real mathematical models of based on the mass and the weight of this body, which is the turntable, in condition of zero gravity. But I was also interested to somehow solve the question of where it would be shown in the space, where it would be shown. The first time it was in the system in Houston, where were big problems of the acoustics, which I found that very interesting. So it was about how to release the sounds from the space, which is another form of breathing in and breathing out, like taking the sounds in, but also letting the sounds out. Having done first, one of the early things that we did, it was to make a measuring of the frequency response of the space, how it responded to the different frequencies of Messiaen's music. Actually, it was a very uneven response to different values of frequencies. And this is also what gave an idea that depending on which frequency was being played at a given moment in the piece of Messiaen, we would know how long it took for the space to evacuate it. So in a way, we would know a little bit what was the ma, or the void, the silence moment necessary to evacuate after a given breath, after a given musical phrase. So in that sense, the space itself, like its acoustical imprint of its own architecture, is participating in the composition of the music. Meaning there were certain moments that where a release of the echoes was necessary before the stylus would touch again. So there was a moment of composing between the real behavior of this body in space, but also slightly changing in the certain data in the input, so that and in the composition, so that it would eventually let the space release the sounds. I'll continue with the. Now, in all these moments of revolutions, the fact that both there is the clarinet and the saxophone part, depending on where I've been showing the work, it's not just about showing the work, but it's also about representing the space where the work is being shown, and also bringing in play the acoustics of this place and of this space. In the case of the installation of the system, the way one thing which is very important in the idea of how out of a solo piece for the clarinet, the idea to bring the two instruments together, I absolutely did not want to destroy this feeling of desolation that is written by Messiaen in his piece, The Abyss of the Bird. So how to bring two instruments together and yet not make it a conversation, not make it a dialogue, how to keep it in the level of the monologue, how to not taint the loneliness that is in the playing of one instrument. So the piece was recomposed in such a way that while the saxophone and the clarinet, which were recorded separately, while they are playing at the same time with the same breaths, they are not necessarily playing all the time the same. They are playing the same notes, but they are not arriving at the same note at the same time. So there is always this moment of being slightly ahead or lingering slightly behind. So there is a moment of indecision between what is the now moment in what we are hearing. This is more amplified in the case of the cistern because of the film being shown in this very large, at times almost transparent screen. And the perimeter where the people could go and see the work and listen to the work being much larger, there was the revolution that you see in the image was also the starting point of revolutions between the clarinet and the saxophone. So there will be swapping places between being in front or being behind the screen. In the case of Bourse de Commerce in Paris, which is another image that you saw later. There, the whole correlation between the two instruments was specially remixed in a way that it took in account the height of the space. And then there is also something in the way of how it's not only about the acoustics of the piece, but it's also about the acoustics, I would say, of the colors. In the case of Bourse de Commerce, where it was shown in the main rotonda, there is also this very much in the public notice big mural, which places which is like an ode to commerce, an ode to crossing the continents, and an ode to getting everywhere. But also, it's not just about an ode to exploration, but of course, it because about commerce, it's about an ode as well to exploitation. And in these moments of revolution, and also there is this a combination of working with the lights that are triggered by what is happening in the film. There was also a way for me to, in an abstract manner, to revisit the hues or the colors which were in going all around the fresco. It's a fresco that not only represents the 5 continents, but also represents them in the 4 different seasons. So there is this variation of a wheel of colors, which is also the wheel of the time around the fresco. To go one step back in my interest about how to devise a work a little bit, almost like a device of like a musical instrument, but also a device of time. A little bit like the double body that I showed before, where the presence of the 2 excavated bodies become the lungs in a way that plays the instrument, and it translates into a duration, hence becomes almost like a time measuring instrument. In the case of Time No Longer, I was very much interested about also the correlation between how the time it took the duration of the film, but also its correlation to being up there in the International Space Station. One of the things that gave a sense of beginning and end, as well as the loop to the film, is the fact that when up there, while being in the International Space Station, one sees within 24 hours 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets. This happens because of the fact that the ISS, it has to go so fast around the orbit, so fast in order not to be pulled by the gravity of the Earth, which means that it's not accelerating time, but which means that it sees 16 times the sun appear and disappear. So in that sense, the film and the duration of the film and the way of how it plays music was also connected to it being able to represent this moment of time, which is from a sunrise to a sunset. Now to next chamber I would briefly jump to is which is completely in full contrast with working with the CGI, by the way of how one works with CGI, one anticipates the elements, would be a body of work that I've been doing more recently in fresco. Like fresco, the technique of painting on a fresh plaster, which is the technique of the Quattrocento. But before I go there, I want to speak a little bit about what it is also to work to anticipate time, to anticipate stages, in a way of like the way one composes with time, or composes with music, or composes with the image. In the case of the CGI, where so many things are at the same time out of the control, wanting them not to be under my control, or the mathematical model that decides about how the turntable would behave in zero gravity, but also of anticipating so many scripts at once, which is a script of, like, nothing is a given in the CGI. So it's not like you place a camera and then reality would appear. You have to script everything. You have to script not only the narrative, but you also have to script where the focus will go, because otherwise there is no focus. You have to decide where the focus is. And this was also a possibility for me to connect the focus. It's something that may not come as strongly across here, but in the physicality of the installation, to connect it to the music, where often is the music that takes in control, that pulls the focus of what we see. And then jumping into the frescoes, I will launch the. I was interested in another correlation of temporality between the syntax of making a fresco, like how a fresco is done al fresco on a freshly put plaster. Usually it's very sensitive to humidity, to the temperature, but when everything comes together in a like it should, there is a window of opportunity to work on the surface between 6 to 8 hours. It's something that, a little bit like in cinema, it's what you're painting. You're not painting the color as you want it to be seen. It's something that comes with a lot of layers. So it's very, in that sense, it's very both archaeological and geological, the way of how the color will sit in and will be absorbed or integrated through the skin of the plaster into the depth of it. There is another moment of anticipation and also loss of control to some extent, is that one composes a fresco in giornata. You always start from up and you go down. Gravity, to the contrary of time no longer, which is so much about weightlessness, gravity is very important in the fresco, because it's exactly what will integrate the very liquidy layers of color in within the wall. One has to always go over, to go stronger in contrast, to go darker, because in the process that will start shortly after of the drying of the wall over 3-4 days, the colors will start going, as they dry, they will become lighter. So there is another moment which is like dancing with time, which is yearning and searching for continuity, because by the time that you do the second part, which is lower, and you are seeking to have a continuity in the image, then you always have to go darker than so you have to go past continuity, meaning you reach that moment that you think you've reached continuity. That's exactly where you should not. You should stop and then continue. And the moment that there are 3 or 4 giornatas together, then you are not only dealing with the giornata before, but you are dealing with all so it's a little bit like 3-4 shifting realities. In the case, I only chose to show this series. It's a series which could come across as abstract, or but it's based on images that I often take of the sky when I'm flying. So it's a combination of temporalities of 3 that I would count, which is not only some form of semi-abstract representation of the sky, of the instantness of how the clouds find themselves. It's their combination with the stone incrustation, but also the like I described before, the technique of the fresco. One advantage with the velatura, which is also my advantage by being able to work on the frescoes as them not being solidary to the walls, meaning that I could put them also horizontal when I do some of the layers. There is this moment there is this horizon. There is a shift. The moment when you are not putting the color like culturally, like a painter, but you let the surface. The moment this horizon, you let the surface take the color in. So there is something very geological about it, which also becomes very mineralic, because the color it's the gravity that will take the color, and it will also depend a lot on the porosity of the places. So in my experience, there is a lot about anticipating and losing control. It's about composing with time ahead, but also on a longer term, but also continuously shifting and continuously losing control and letting the surface behave velatura, like layer after layer. Hence, it produces this not only this combination between the three ways of how time deposits itself. It's how it deposits itself in the rocks over time, the way of how it represents itself in an image for us of a sky, but also the way of how it integrates the cluster. So there are these 3 similar protocols, but who have their own different temporality that come together to produce this image. So it's a very I choose to show these 2 groups of works together, because while in time no longer there is both the control of anticipating everything beforehand, but on the other hand there is also the letting go of what the mathematical model of the behavior of the body will decide to do with the body in weightlessness. And while hence here it's the other way around, it's the fact that it's the gravity that will decide many things about how the colors will enter in interaction with the surface, but also with each other, producing very often what I said, these gestures which are I would say more geological, hence more mineralic, hence more natural than cultural in the way of the accidents or the artifacts that it produces on the surface. There is another aspect which I was interested is about how time, the dimensionality of time, like how time evolves. Because I had the chance to work with marble pieces that had already been used before, which belonged to a family that works in Naples with marble since 4 generations. Most of the marbles that I could take from them and work with them to cut them according to my indications that had already been used before. And in some of the cases of the marbles, this is really like stratas, adjacent stratas of the same stone, which means that if you see different images together, which is, say, images of the skies, there is a sense of passing by, which is the sense of passing by from left to right in the way how we read or how we look at something. But by composing the different stratas that I found, by putting them in the different works, there is a certain animation within the stone, meaning there is a way to see that the time in the stone, when you compare them, is going inwards. It's going like what is next in the difference between one stone and the same, and the next layer in the other painting is not evolving through this linearity of something which is evolving in front of us and parallel to us, but it's evolving in depth within the depth of the stone. So these were the different chapters or the different elements that I wanted to touch upon, which for me they relate to this moment of what are these processes which like what is the horizon of the experience, meaning a horizon of experience which is not based in the rational splitting of time between before, now, and later. It's something that lingers in between, inhabits this interval that brings together these elements of what is no longer, what is now, and what is not there yet. It does not interrupt them in ways that I would say language, syntax of language, or the heartbeat does, which is much, in both cases, being much more explicit in the way of how they separate time, but they produce more amalgamation between the experience of these moments, which are not necessarily so clearly separated. And I think what glues a lot of this together, to go back to the earliest of the measures that we mentioned today, is this moment of the breath, which is a moment that both as a physical breath, or both as a musical phrase, as a measure of time in music or in life, is something that goes past this clearly separated connotations of time. That is it. Thank you. But I wanted to also just add a last note when I was thinking about like what is the sound, what is the soundtrack of something that would have been but didn't, and it's a little bit like differentiating between differentiating the past from the memory that tries to remember it. This is this moment when the two split from each other, and I think this is the moment where where music allows for a form of drifting that keeps the relation between past, or the way we remember it, very much back in negotiation. Thank you.
Anri, thank you for that generous talk. I've always thought you'd make a remarkable architect because of the things you don't show us, because of the things that you allow us to discover for ourselves, the things that aren't immediately obvious or explicit. You talk quite a bit about time no longer, going from the Buffalo Bay system to the Bourse. But can you think of other examples where an architect's, I don't want to say ego, but things that architects have done with spaces that are art spaces that you've been invited to show, and where curators said, I'd love you to show this work in this room and so on, where you've had to change a work initially because of the awkwardness or the strangeness of the space, or what other artists have told you about those spaces, the acoustics, the rhythm and pace, the kind of oddness of the space. We've had to change a work because it was a problem to show the work in there, and I say that in inverted commas, but where the work has changed and become much more interesting. I'm thinking of maybe Ravel, Venice, Tamayo, New Museum, many other examples, Kostler, Drivoli, but can you maybe tell us a bit more about that process?
Well, I think there is, at least in my practice, there is one thing to adapt the work so that by encountering the space, they enter in a conversation where both win in that sense. Like, for example, remixing a work in a situation, so that the frequency, the musical frequencies in the work, and how the space will play these frequencies back. There is a tuning, there is a matching about them. In the case, for example, of Time No Longer at the Bourse, because of the Tadeo Ando wall, Tadeo Ando circular wall, which is very reflective, but also because of the rotonda, of the cupola on top of it, it was very interesting that we took away some of the notes of the saxophone and just put pure frequencies, like pure mathematical sound frequencies, to be played in the space, because this integrated the space more. Not in terms of making it sound nicer, but it just made the space respond to the piece. So in that sense, this is one of these examples where the work becomes a little bit like the musical instrument that plays the space, or becomes the flow of air within the body of an instrument that gives it its particular voice and timbre. Then there are other moments we just mentioned before when we spoke briefly with Parveen. There's a work, for example, that I did for a show in Bregenz with a beautiful Zumthor space, which also, once again, is concrete walls, dissimilar but similar to the Tadeo Ando, especially when it comes to the acoustics. There I took a very different approach. I was very interested in showing nothing, showing the space, and making a work out of it. So in that case, what I did as the procedure, it was relatively simple. It's to take photos of all the walls, like what you call architecture photos, meaning take them in a certain way that and then project these images back. There was a series of projectors all around the walls, which was projecting to the wall an image of itself. And then all the sounds that were coming from the different floors, it's 4 floors of the Zumthor building, were inputting into, in a way, it's not that I want to overload or overuse the word breathing today, but they were inputting in how the focus and out of focus was changing, hence making it feel like the space was breathing. It was a very percussive work in a way, because every time that the concrete went out of focus, it became very soft and became like something which is not here anymore. It's somewhere behind. So plays with the idea of almost like that there is almost like an abstract horizon behind the surface of the concrete. And that was one of the cases which was not to show was not to show a work there, but it was about how to void the space and yet make it alive, but by what it has itself. And yet it was not like the usual floor of Zumthor that had been if you'd go there to see it as a space. So there was this, the walls became really like a skin which was palpitating in relation to the sounds were coming from the other floors in the museum, which of course I was anticipating. I knew because there are other floors, which I thought a little bit like in musical forms, it's called a symphony with 4 movements. No, it's like it's a first movement, second movement, third and fourth movement. So it was in the third movement that was being played by the first, second, and fourth in that way. Another example would be, but very different, would be Ravel in Venice in the German Pavilion, which was both a place where I filmed to do the second part and Ravel, but also the place where I showed Ravel during the Biennale, and by transforming it into a semi-anechoic room. Transforming a space into an anechoic room, it's a little bit like the place is no longer there, meaning, yes, the place is there, we see that it's there, but there is no reflection of sound. And because of our awareness of being in space, very much depends also on even our balance, also on our ears. The fact that when we speak or when somebody speaks to us, there is no reflection of sound, we are no longer in a particular place there. We know where we are visually, but we are no longer in the particular place. Hence, I was very interested first, okay, there is also the other levels of what it means to transform that space in a non-place, with all the history that it has, but also how to inhabit that place and not just leave it void, leave it empty. So the fact that I showed there a work which comprised two pianists and 2 orchestras playing along each other but not in sync, and the way how they were in and out of sync was very much composed in advance. I was very much interested in this. For example, when you play the same score of music twice, and if there are moments when it goes in and out of sync, then in our experience, the second time you hear the same note, you have the feeling of an echo. So the moment that you have a feeling of an echo, you start having a feeling of space. So the shorter the interval when the musicians or the orchestra would be out on sync with each other, the smaller the space. The bigger the interval, the bigger the space. And this was completely based on a time-based regime, because, like, again, obviously there was a space. People were within a space, I was showing within a space, but on the acoustic point, there was no space. It was shrink to nothing. So it was the interval within the films, which again became a little bit a device to play a space, but also to set a physicality of time. The interval between the films became like an accordion. So the closer to synchronity, it became like a cell. And the bigger the interval, the more out of sync it became a cathedral. So these are ways of how to deal with the space, whether it's a space that is rich because of its history, or its past uses, or it's rich because it's architecture qualities. These are like how my work becomes like a device. Or I don't like calling it a musical instrument, but the instrument that plays the space.
You've used in various ways the format, I use the word format, not form, of looping. And looping has some relation to stillness, but at the same time, some relation to motion and to time. In the fresco, I think I'm seeing waves. Now, waves are an example of non-repetitive reiteration. Instead of simply going in a palindromic way, A, B, C, C, B, A, A, B, C, C, B, A, each iteration is slightly different. You see each wave come in, but rather like snowflakes are always different. And it seems to me that this is one way in which you may be able to somehow hold together both stillness and passage, the moment and time And of course, breathing is a fundamental form of iteration. Every breath is the same, but no two breaths are ever really the same. So I wondered if you have any general thoughts about the format of looping in its variants.
I think there is something. Well, looping could be, on one end, it could be, it just say, let's start from the worst it can be, a necessity in an exhibition format for the work to start again. But it's not the same looping, for example, if you take Time No Longer, which is a continuous shot, like CGI, but it's a continuous shot where is no cuts, no edits. So in my work, over time, whether it's CGI, but also previously, there is an element in my work that allows me to work with looping the way I work, is that the characters or what is happening, whether thanks to the music as well, a lot, we are continuously in they are in their present moment. For example, when you see the actress going through the city of Sarajevo, she's moving forward with the first movement of Pathetic. So she is also moving forward in the grid of the city as it is, with barely or few or not important or absolutely not conceptually important ellipses, for example. So the fact that there are no ellipses in my work make the loop be not just a necessity when it comes, but it's the moment that it refreshes this contract between the visitor, because when you're a visitor in a museum, and more so, I would say, than when you are sitting in a cinema, you have a very strong feeling of your own continuity, because you are also moving around. And I like to involve and to include the geography of how the visitor is invited, not obliged, but invited to move around by the way of how I choreograph how the exhibition evolves in the space. So the moment that there is this one-to-one scale between the present moment of the visitor and the present moment of the represented character, it almost looks like there is no edit, no eclipse. One thing is that, with the exception of Time No Longer, that it's true that there is no cut, but in all the other works, or many of the other works, there is cut, but there is a continuity in music. In Time No Longer is the other way around, is that there is no cut, but there's this continuity in music. So now to go back to the loop, is that, and also Brett helps with it, is this continuous feeling of being in the present moment, or a chain of present moments which are linked by the breath. So when the loop comes in, it's it's not just like a technical necessity, but it becomes like part of the editing of time within the work. And I say this also because it may sound technical, but it's very important. For example, in the film that I mentioned before, Ravel, when you are looping technically a work, there's a moment when sound cannot play. Image you can loop seamlessly, but sound you cannot loop seamlessly. So you have to include the moment of the loop where you want it, where it can be in the work. So there is a continuity in sound, also because there in the space there are the acoustics, they may help you, but you cannot all of a sudden not have the sound because you'd feel that. So for example, in the film Ravel, the loop does not happen in the beginning or the end of the concerto. I don't know, for those who don't know the work, it's the concerto for the left hand of Ravel. I won't go much longer in the history of it, although it's very interesting, the history of that concerto. But at the end of the film, which is also the beginning of the film, is the moment when the left hands of the pianist are going down like a pendulum. Now, this is conceptual, it's both the beginning and the end, so it's neither the beginning nor the end, but the loop could not happen there because it would be impossible not to have sound in that moment, because then we would lose the sense of continuity. Hence, the loop, the technical loop, the way how the film is played, is just after the first orchestra solo and before, the first orchestra and before the first piano cadenza. So looping is, I very much included in the way of how I conceive a work. it was the same thing also with Time No Longer. There are many of my works, or quite a few of my works with music, where the beginning of the film, of the digital file, does not correspond with the beginning of the film, so that it's able to metabolize or to respond or to resolve these problems of the loop, so that the loop becomes not either the beginning or the end or somewhere in between, but it becomes a part of the duration of the work.
We could probably go on all night. I think every time you answer a question, it expands the possibility for more. I want to invite everyone to also join you for a drink next door and to ask some more personal questions, perhaps. I want to thank you so much, and absolutely exquisitely inspiring, and particularly, I think, the last answers to the questions, because it gets my mind more going. So thank you so much, and thank you to all here and to your wonderful questions.
Thanks.
So please join us
Thank you
next
for
door.
your time.